This has never happened before, and here we go again. After loud mutual threats with Israel and strikes on Iran's energy sector, Donald Trump unexpectedly called off the attacks, stating that the US and Iran had almost reached an agreement on a nuclear deal, for which this whole war was started. And here is a specific threat. After the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, paid an official visit to Washington last week, there were leaks of information that the US and Israel are preparing one of the most powerful strikes of the entire war against Iran's energy infrastructure facilities. And this could happen in the coming days. But already on Monday morning, the parties started talking about negotiations again. But there are differences here. Donald Trump insists that he is negotiating with Iran. Iranian officials deny this and say that they are not having any dialogue with the Americans. But we've already been through this several times since the beginning of this war. That is, Trump threatens to launch an unprecedented strike, then talks about negotiations again, and the Iranians reject everything again. But how is the current situation different from all the others, from all the previous ones? And in fact, there really is a difference now. So to say that everything will just repeat as it did before wouldn't be quite appropriate. So in this episode, we'll break down what happened this time and why experts suddenly saw reasons for optimism while oil is getting cheaper again. My name is Alexei Pechi. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this YouTube channel. We are moving towards the mark of 300,000 subscribers, so I will be grateful for every subscription. So, let's go through everything step by step. Let's start with the threat against Iran itself. Shortly before the cancellation, Trump published a post in which he literally stated the following: "The United States of America is loaded and ready to act against the Islamic Republic of Iran with a level of military force and power unseen since World War II." According to Axios, it was specifically about striking the basic elements of Iran's power grid and infrastructure. That is, not military targets, but the country's civilian energy sector. That's what Trump basically threatens every time he wants to try to negotiate with the Iranians. But, as always, just a few minutes later, the same Donald Trump makes a sharp 180-degree turn. Trump writes, quote, "We have just received a request from Iran and other Middle Eastern countries to refrain from any attack, since the parameters of the nuclear deal have already been agreed upon. Based on this request, I agreed for the future good of peace and, accordingly, the survival of a successful and prosperous Iran, to call off the attack on the condition that we can quickly reach a deal." And so, according to him, this deal should include, quote, "the immediate, complete, hysterical, and absolute opening of the Hormuz Strait and the end of Iran's nuclear threat." Well, it sounds nice as always, but in reality, Iran is unlikely to just unconditionally give up the Hormuz Strait. That's not why they've been stalling for so long. But what is definitely known is exactly who was behind this change of course by Donald Trump. Because, if you remember, Donald Trump used to always say that someone from the region asked him to stop, that in fact he himself never cancels attacks on Iran. Every time someone asks him to stop, but later no one could confirm it, he kept saying, "The Gulf monarchies asked me," but then not a single monarchy confirmed this. Or, he says, "The Iranians asked me, they were begging, please take a pause, let's talk." But then the Iranians said, "We never reached out to anyone at all." But this time there is a specific person who apparently really asked not to attack Iran. According to Axios, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, called Donald Trump on Saturday and really expressed concern about the plans to strike Iran. CBS News confirms that it was bin Salman who persuaded the American president to abandon new powerful strikes and return to de-escalation. Moreover, the official Saudi agency also confirmed on Sunday that Trump and bin Salman had in fact spoken. And what's also important is that bin Salman called Trump after the American president had held talks with Benjamin Netanyahu, After which Trump began threatening strikes on the energy sector. But apparently, bin Salman managed to persuade Trump better than Netanyahu did. At the same time, on the same day, a harsh warning came from the Iranian side. In particular, Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi, addressing his Saudi counterpart, Prince Faisal bin Farhan, stated, quote, "Any hostile action by the United States of America or Israel, or participation or assistance by countries in the region in such actions, will be met with a decisive and proportionate response from the powerful armed forces of Iran." And then, a day later, on the 3rd of August, Trump specified the details. He stated that negotiations with Iran would begin today, on Monday, and that this, quote, "would save many lives." According to him, there is already some kind of deal regarding the Hormuz Strait, and he is counting on an agreement on the issue of Iran's denuclearization as well. And then comes Trump's key quote, "I would prefer to make a deal. I don't like killing people." At the same time, he emphasized that the US military can resume actions against Iran at any moment if necessary. But here's where things start to get really interesting and most revealing for understanding what's actually happening. The official representative of the Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Esmail Baghaei, today, August 3rd, actually refuted all the statements made by Donald Trump. He stated the following on Iranian television, quote, "At the moment, we have no negotiations with the United States of America. According to him, the only dialogue Tehran is currently conducting is negotiations with Oman, and they concern exclusively the creation of a safe route for shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, and even that is for a fee." Baghaei clarified a detail that explains a lot. On August 3, the head of Iran's foreign ministry, Abbas Araghchi, according to him, is actually going on a pilgrimage, and the rest of the negotiation team is in Iran. So, as you understand, physically, the Iranian delegation is not going anywhere to the US, nor is the American delegation expected in Tehran or anywhere on neutral territory. Basically, no one is going anywhere, but according to Trump, negotiations have already resumed today. And finally, Baghaei's closing remark. The situation in the Hormuz Strait will not change as long as the US continues its aggression and blockade, which is very important. The oil price shows just how real this uncertainty is. In particular, the price of Brent crude oil, which last week briefly exceeded $100 a barrel for the first time since May, on Monday, after Trump's statement, sharply fell by more than 8%, dropping below $89. At one point, it even fell below $83. But immediately after the fact of negotiations was publicly denied in Tehran, the price of oil started to rise again. That is, the market is literally reacting right now to every contradictory statement from both sides. Now, why is this not the only case when Trump threatens and then cancels, but rather a recurring pattern? And this recurring pattern is actually very interesting from a research perspective. Let me remind you, back in March, just a couple of weeks after the start of the whole war waged by the US and Israel against Iran, Trump announced a 10-day pause in strikes on Iran's energy infrastructure, moving the deadline to April 6. Then the deadlines kept getting pushed back again and again, and as you remember, it all started with 10 days, then turned into a month, and so on. Every time the logic is the same. Trump announces an unprecedented strike in the toughest way possible, which provokes a sharp rise in oil prices and panic in the region. Then a certain mediator figure appears. This time, it's Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who convinces Trump to postpone the attack for the sake of an almost completed deal. And then the Iranian side either does not confirm the existence of this deal or directly denies it. And against this background, a very important remark. You see the pattern, right? Trump makes loud threats. I'll destroy the entire energy sector. This will be the most powerful strike since World War II. Then, according to him, someone appears who is in the region and asks him, even begs him, not to strike. And he says, well, okay, fine, I won't strike. And well, the next stage, Iran says there's no deal at all. What are you even talking about? And so today it turned out that the oil giants reported record profits amid the war with Iran. The company ExxonMobil officially earned more than $14.5 billion in a quarter. Chevron made $12 billion. Shell made almost $10 billion, all against the backdrop of soaring gas and oil prices. That is, the longer the Middle East burns, the more the largest oil companies in the US and Europe earn. But sometimes, oil prices need to be lowered so that other companies can buy in. As soon as they buy in, the prices can be raised again so that American and European companies profit from it. As they say, I'm not hinting at anything. Just some food for thought. What does all this mean? For Iran itself, Trump's approach is actually beneficial, because every time the threat of a massive strike on the energy sector becomes almost real, the country gets a respite, either at the cost of formal concessions on shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, which it eventually denies as a deal, or well, with some new statements. For Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Qatar, who, according to Trump himself, who allegedly also constantly ask him not to launch strikes. The logic is also obvious. A strike on Iran's energy infrastructure could provoke a full-scale regional crisis, and strikes on their own oil and gas facilities, which the Gulf monarchs absolutely want to avoid. For Trump himself, canceling the strike allows him to appear strong at the same time, which, as he put it, was ready for an attack unseen since World War II. And at the same time as a peacemaker who negotiated de-escalation. At the same time, the real price of such a position is still unclear, since neither side has presented any written agreement. And so, judging by the repetition of this pattern, the cycle of threat, withdrawal of the threat, and denials will repeat again in a few days or weeks if the negotiations once again fail to produce results. On the other hand, if the pressure from Saudi Arabia and other Gulf monarchies turns out to be sustained and not just a one-time event, this could actually slow down military escalation for a longer period. But as you can see, in none of these scenarios am I saying that the war will definitely end. In conclusion, Trump, as he put it, cancelled one of the toughest strikes in the entire history of warfare, citing requests from Iran, regional monarchies, and the agreed terms of the Hormuz Strait Deal and nuclear harmonization. И даже ядерной программе. Iran did not publicly confirm this deal, and a representative of the Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs directly stated that there were no negotiations with the US at all. The price of oil reacts to each of these contradictory statements, and as you remember, this is not the first time that the threat of a massive attack is replaced by the announcement of negotiations without any tangible result, and the repetition of this pattern makes it reasonable to have a cautious rather than optimistic view of the real chances for a settlement in the coming days or weeks. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, I would appreciate it. You can do so with any financial donation using the links and details in the description of this video. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.